Well, welcome back. I had a nice cold day here where I had to run up to the farm that our fat steers are on. And I figured today's a good day as any to finally do the equipment tour video. This is skid loader number 1 out of 4. No, 5. This one's a 160. There's a 218, 220, 225, and 320. Yep, 5. So this is the oldest one. And about 2 lifetimes ago, this was actually the one at the farm that we scraped with. It's been from here over to my uncle's, where we feed heifers. And in all that time, it has mounted, you can't even tell how many hours are on it, but if I had to guess, I'd say 20 to 25,000. But she still runs and gets the job done, so it's still here. Don't know why, but it is. Next up is this little gem. It's a 5120 Maxim. It's got just the 4-cylinder Cummins in it. It was actually in my last video a while back. We ran auger with it and it had trouble starting, of course, on its big video daybreak. So it is the loader tractor. Got brought up here to move bales around, and the 400 Farmall that was on the mill went down, so now it's runs the mill. Since we got the skid loader up here now, we don't need the loader tractor all the time. But that one, I want to say it's got in the neighborhood of 12,000, 15,000 hours. And I know for a fact the dash doesn't work in this one. We actually bought this from a co-op. It was a fertilizer loader, so that's why it's quite rough. They were not nice to it, but it was cheap, so it's here. And there's the 400. I'm not gonna even touch on Farmalls because we got old tractors out the wazoo. There's 3 back there, I think, plus that one, plus that one. It really isn't. That's a whole nother video in itself. And also this skid loader is my cousin, so we'll ignore that. The Mighty Spray Coupe 7660. This has been here, I think we went through our 2nd season with it last year, so this will be its 3rd year here. Kind of have a few issues here and there with the electrical stuff, figuring stuff out. There's a big ECM, or basically computer brain, in there that acts up on us doesn't act up on us every now and then. Had issues. We had to replace it, and that kind of runs a whole lot of the spraying and stuff, which we were having a whole bunch of issues with. But I think ever since we got that cleared up, everything kind of works. So honestly, not too bad. I want to say it's a 120 foot. No, I honestly do not know. 90 maybe. It's got a full set of wings and then a little folder. Someone probably knows better than I do. I don't do the spraying. I just get to watch it. And I think this one, yeah, this one has a Perkins in it. It was quite an upgrade from our last sprayer. We just had the little spray coupe that looks like an airplane. And that was powered by a V6 Volkswagen engine, gas. And yeah, it literally sounded like an airplane just going through the field. It looked pretty ridiculous, but this one brings the heat. Next up, we got the old Massey 8570. This one replaced, we were running 2 86, no. I think it replaced an 860 and an 870. We bought this combine the same time we went from wide rows to narrow rows. So we needed a 6-row machine and an 860, 850. Probably could have done 6 rows, but they were dog tired. And yeah, so basically one machine, this machine, running one 6-row head could outwork 2 with 4-row heads. Look at all that high-tech 80s technology. It's got a yield monitor, doesn't work. Radio, doesn't work. And it smells like the mice are in here. And it made a home out of corn trash, but then there's that. Good old Massey stuff, you know. The good of this machine is it's got an 8.3 Cummins. It is a rotor combine, even though they called it a rotary, which no one does, so that's kind of weird. The best of her years are behind her. I think it's actually only got like 5,000 hours on it, maybe in the 6th neighborhood now. But yeah, it's, I don't know, it could do a better job than it's doing now. But I'm not the guy that gets to set the combine, so that's none of my business. But we definitely left some corn in the field this year, which, I don't know, doesn't sit well with the guy. And that's not the combine fault, it's probably the guy setting it up, the operator, but that's none of my business. And we got the first Magnum of the video, which makes sense because it was the first Magnum on the farm. I want to say probably early 2000s we picked this up, if not right at 2000. It pretty much replaced the 2805 Massey as the big tractor on the farm, and this thing has chopped more hay than hay and corn. I guess it's done more chopping than about any tractor here. And all the main tillage work, all that for years before the blue tractor showed up. I think we got one engine overhaul on it. It's got the 3 remotes, only the 2-speed reverse, which kind of sucks.
Green and black singlet as Adams French.
And 14,000 hours. I believe it's 14. It's not 24, I know that. I don't know how many hours it had when it showed up here, but I want to say 2,000, in that neighborhood somewhere. It was pretty low houred. But yeah, actually this is even the first 4-wheel drive tractor on the farm, so not bad, not a bad rig. You got to be a pretty bad Magnum to be a bad tractor. And next up, of course, we have probably the prettiest tractor on the farm. That's the 1206. It says International, but that's just the side shields. It should say Farmall because it's Farmall. If you don't know what these are the first tractor, for a fact it's America, that first row crop tractor over 100 horse. I think they're 120-ish. I should probably look that up. But it's one of the dinosaurs here. It's been here forever. Used to have a cab on it. Doesn't anymore. Still gets used. Not daily, but here and there. I had it on the batwing. Did some mowing. It does a lot of feed grinding. That sort of stuff. Just little oddball jobs. Haul manure. And this will be the first of 3 7110s we have. This was the 3rd Magnum we bought, probably 5+ years ago. It's mainly the corn planting tractor, and then it'll run that baler, disc bind in the summer. I want to say this one has like, nah, I'm not even gonna guess. I'm just gonna check. And of course it doesn't say
to
hours.
really get any kind
Maybe you gotta go to accessory. 8,000 hours.
position of get
This one's got 3 remotes, 4-speed reverse. Fun thing about this tractor is this is originally a Canadian tractor. It does not have 3 points. It's got the big heavy duty roller hitch on it. Which, why you would ever need a hitch that heavy for the 130 horse that these tractors originally were. Kind of weird, kind of oddball, but whatever, we'll go with it. See, the front end's all narrowed up for planting corn, and we'll throw duals on it for planting corn. And this one pulls the white corn planter. Good rig. Haven't had much problems with this at all. Actually, before we got it, it was actually a TMR tractor. So, originally a Canadian tractor, came down stateside, ran TMR for a few years, and now it's here. And of course, like every other shed around here, a flood of old tractors. There's even one back there. And for another skid loader in the video, we got the 218. Picked this one up when the engine blew in the 220 and used it as a scrape and skid loader. We got 230 now, so we brought it over here to the other farm where we got our heifers, feeder steers. They must have just got fed. They all look pretty content. But anyway, this one's a 2017 model. We just clicked over 3,000 hours on it. And it just goes. It's got all the def and crap you'd expect from a 2017 model, but it threw one air code at 3,000 hours, which I guess they all do, to clean the EGR valve, which you don't actually have to clean the EGR valve, but you got to reset that code, otherwise it goes in limp mode, so we had to have them come out and reset the code. Slight inconvenience, but that's just how she goes these days. Next up, starting the Ford Genesis. We got 2 of these. This one's the 8970. The other one's the 8670. But this one is the biggest one of the series. It's got 240 horse. And of course, these things have the super steer front end, they call them. Which, if you go in the front, you'll see this whole axle is actually pivoted right now. So what they do is the wheels turn, and then once the wheels turn, and once the steering locks out, it'll actually shift the whole axle. So these things turn on a dime. I got a 6-cylinder turbo Ford diesel, which nothing special. What is special is the funk transmission. And the cab's probably a step up from the Magnum. This one's the lower hour one. Is this thing dead? Why has it got no accessory? There we go. 9,000 hours on it. And I think this tractor is actually the lowest hour tractor we got. I don't know why it's beeping at me. The parking brake is on. What are you talking about? I shouldn't have done that. As you can tell, these tractors... No, that's fun. That's probably going to give it a dead battery. Shouldn't have done that. I'll go over the transmission on the other one so I don't got to deal with that beeping. Anyway, this is technically the biggest tractor on the farm. 240 horse. 4-wheel drive super steer. It's our chopping, turbo tilling, big beaster of a tractor in its time, I guess. Right now the engine's kind of worse for wear. It's in need of a rebuild and a polish. It's kind of a lighter blue than it should be. One more living dinosaur on the farm is here yet. White 270. This tractor actually used to be on the TMR, which was probably as big of a job as you want to do on a 270, but it did it every day for years. This is actually the first tractor my dad ever bought, and in true 310 Waukesha engine style, it needed a rebuild right off the bat, but I think since then it hasn't been touched. This tractor I actually took over with me to tech school as the first tractor I really did a major project on. I put a new clutch in it, pulled the injectors out, had them rebuilt. I think I even put new brakes in it, or tightened up the brakes, one of them. I did something to the brakes anyway, but yeah, one of the old original irons of the farm still around. It's on the feed mill, so it grinds feed twice a day, every day. Does the job. And yet again, another skid loader. This is 225. It's the biggest skid loader on the farm. It is the feed loader, and that's one of the reasons it's the large frame skid loaders, is we need the height with the boom to get up and feed with. Been a good unit. We haven't had any problems at all with this, other than a belt broke and got into the fan, wrecked the radiator, so it's got a new radiator in it, but that's not really the skid loader's fault. Just kind of is what it is. It's here and it does the job every day. And this one's got, I think, only 2,200 hours on it. And I want to say it's a 2012 model. That was easy. Yeah, if this one's a 2012, I think the 220 is actually a 2012 too. I think. Now that I know that tag's there, I'll be able to tell. That's the 225. And I know I said it a few times, I don't want to get into the old tractors, but this one's probably the oldest, CF20. And this is about as bare bones a tractor as there ever was. Just kind of a neat one. And I suppose we're here and I'm talking about it. This is the little utility 350 diesel. I used to haul manure with this, and just the tiniest little New Holland box spreader you've ever seen. But anyway, those are old tractors. I don't want to talk about them. And the only two John Deeres on the farm, which doing what John Deeres are good at, just sitting in the shed. And of course, you can't forget the other two 150 on the farm. This one is the old one that's always been here on this farm. My grandpa bought this. It's one of the old irons that are still around. Was a big tractor in her time. Did all the chopping, all the big field work with it. Just an absolute moose. And up until about 5 years ago, used to have a front grill on it. But being on the manure pump, the old manure tank rolled into it and took that out. Which, still waiting on one of those. Not that I've got one ordered, but someday I'm going to fix that. But yeah, that's the other White on the farm, still around. Now some of these tractors, if you're wondering how many hours are on them, the ones that I don't say how many hours are on them, all of them, all the hours. Mostly because that hour meter don't work no more. And lo and behold, another skid loader. This is 220. Horrible engine. Was a good skid loader until the engine decided to explode a couple times, but this was the first skid loader we had with the full enclosed cab, and it kind of pampered us, and now every skid loader we get has a full enclosed cab except for the 218, but that was just kind of a we needed a skid loader moment. This one is a 2011. So I was wrong. I thought that this was a 12. So yeah, it's got a fresh rebuild. I think less than 200 hours on it. And it's basically just sitting here waiting to be sold. We are gonna send it to a consignment sale because what they give us for trade-in wasn't that much. And considering how hot used equipment's been, especially a skid loader with a cab and heat and air and radio, yada yada, it should be worth more than what they wanted to give us. So that's 220. And then there is the Swiss Army knife, absolute gem, straight to my heart. Spent so much time in this tractor, the 7110. This would be the second Magnum we bought. It was the first one of the 7110s, and we liked it so much we actually bought two more. It does absolutely everything and anything we need it to do. Most of the days now, though, it just spends its time on the baler, mainly because I run the baler, I run this tractor. But it'll pull a disc, finisher, grain cart, batwing, literally pretty much anything. These tractors are originally 130 horse, I think it is. This one's sitting at 180, which is the same as that plant Magnum. The other 7110, they're both sitting about 180, and it's just right for them. The interior leaves something to be desired. I did put a buddy seat in this, and yeah, someday it's getting a cab kit, because it's a little rough. Colt had sat in here all summer and stood on the seat and would peel at the top of the cab, so yeah. It needs a cab kit. It does have a coat of paint. We painted it a couple years ago. Doing good. Instead of fading like to a pink color, it actually turned like a maroon, which is odd, but anyway, it needed new paint. It got new paint. Should have put new decals on it, but yeah. What do you do? So that is the 7110. I do have a few honorable mentions that I want to just throw in, even though they're not here. They're a lot of the tractors I remember growing up in or running. Number one being 2805 Massey, if you know what that is. It is a V8 turbo. I don't know if they were turboed or not. They were V8 Perkins diesel, like 180 horse, 200, somewhere in there. Just beast of a tractor. Sucked fuel like no other. We had one. It was our big tractor, like through the 90s. Just a unit. I think we blew an engine or two in that, but sweet tractor. Another honorable mention I wanted to talk about is the 1370 case. Now, we actually had three of these, and they all had distinct features. Number one was white instead of the typical desert sand color. Number two had combine tires on the rear, which ultimately earned it the name Fat Tire Case. It's simple but effective. And then the third one just was your standard row cop tires. We call it Skinny Tire Case. That's actually pretty tractor right to my heart, because that's one of those that I grew up riding in and then later started driving, and that was probably the first tractor that I ran. Also awesome tractor, super reliable until their transmission grenades, and then it's just time to get rid of them. But they put in the work, and they're probably the reason why we're still here. While also on the subject of Massey, we also had a 2705 Massey, which was also one of those tractors that I grew up riding in and then eventually ran. And I planted hundreds, if not thousands, of acres of alfalfa and oats, because that was the tractor that was on the grain drill. And that's one of those jobs you can throw some kid on and they can just do. So that tractor was actually so distinctive in my childhood that I actually bought one and then resold shortly before YouTube became a thing. And I really like a 2705 Massey. Good tractor. Also, on a side note, the 2705 Massey, before the 7120 Magnum came along, was the only tractor on the farm that had air conditioning in like the late 90s to early 1000s. So yeah, I ran that one as much as I could. Air conditioning is a good thing. Then there's the 2294. This thing kind of showed up and replaced the 1370 case. Was kind of what we used as a Magnum before the Magnum came, so it did a little bit of everything. And then the 1370 that was on the TMR mixer, I think the transmission let go on that. So we needed TMR tractor. We now had the Magnums to do everything this one was doing, so it ended up on the mixer and does the job every day. It's kind of an oil leaking, not fancy tractor, but it wakes up every day and does its job. Mixing feed and running through buildings is a little hard on it. The pipe is a little curvy and bent up, but she goes every day. In fact, it goes twice a day, every day. We feed cows twice a day, every day. And it does it. So you can't knock it too bad. It did. The original engine blew up. Rebuilt it. Had problems with it. Found out the block was probably bad, so it's on a second engine now. But that's pretty rare because these got the 504 case engines in them. And yeah, you really don't have problems with those. Those are basically an 8.3 before the 8.3 was a thing. And they're a pretty solid engine. And the last skid loader of the video is the newest edition. It's 320. I think it's a 21 model. Oh, look at that. They changed it. They don't even put it on the tag. I think it's 21. That's weird. 21. Pretty much all the bells and whistles. Just missing a backup camera. It's got a heated seat. I think 1,700 hours on it. So not new, but might as well be. It's got the wider tires than we typically run, but it actually worked out okay in the freestyle, so we left them on, and a good unit so far. And the other New Holland, Ford, New Holland, Genesis, whatever you want to call them, it's the 8670. This one is actually the smallest of the series. I think they're only 130-ish, 130, 150 horse. It's four-wheel drive. It's got the super steer like the other one. But this one came out of California. And basically, since this tractor was new, it sat on an irrigation pump. And all the writing is kind of gone. But basically, this thing would run something like our manure pump. And they would just hit these for directional valves to spray. So it ended up racking up a pile of hours. Just under 17,000. And as far as we can tell, the engine has never been touched. The transmission's never been touched. We do have a few issues with solenoids every now and then, but that's mostly because I think out in California, dealing with the humidity, or not humidity, just the heat and everything, that sheathing on the wires actually shrinks back and it'll expose wire and then short out and causes issues. Hasn't caused a fire yet, which I shouldn't have said that, but the best part about these tractors is they got the Funk transmission in them, and that's an awesome transmission. Basically, you're going forward, shift down, shift up, shift down, shift up, 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 up. Now you're going backwards, shift up, shift up. Funk transmission is by far the best part of these tractors. That transmission was used in New Hollands and Fords, Masseys, Whites, all the ACOs. I don't think International or Case ever ran them. John Deere actually ended up buying the Funk transmission, and I don't know if they drove it into the ground or not, but if you buy a transmission part for a New Holland tractor, it'll come in a John Deere box, because that's capitalism apparently. But pretty much these were the best transmission you could find in a tractor, hands down. So if you can't beat them, join them. And yeah, I don't know how long they kept running funk transmissions, but they probably ran those until CVTs became the way to go, which I'm still not sold on CVTs, but anyway, this tractor kind of does a little bit of everything. It's mostly tillage, cutting hay, hauling manure. Good all-around unit. It's pretty good on fuel. It may be the smaller of the Genesis, but this one probably does, I don't know, twice the hours on the same fuel as the 240 horse one does. And of course, to round out the video, we got the old Cummins 250 White. There's so many videos of this on the page, so I'm not going to get into too much detail about it. But if this is your first video, this has got the motor out of a 2366 IH combine, 240 horse. My great grandpa bought this tractor new. It was over at their farm over in Iowa, Minnesota, and went from my great grandpa to my great uncle. His two boys farmed with it, and while it was on the feed mixer, the flywheel separated from the main crank and it quit running. And obviously, if you can't spin the flywheel, you ain't gonna start a tractor. But they didn't know it at the time. They thought the crank broke, so they just never did anything with it. It sat for probably 8 years. I got it, showed it some love, put the new engine in. I really wish I would have kept the old engine just to tear it apart and see what the heck was wrong with it, but I didn't. And now, wish I would have, but oh well, it probably wouldn't have changed anything. These tractors originally came with the Minneapolis Moline, and it's almost impossible to find parts for them. And even if you can, they're so ungodly expensive. It was actually cheaper to buy a motor, put a motor in, even with all the extra stuff, than just one rebuild on that motor. So that's how it ended up the way it is. There is one tractor missing from the video, and that is the third 7110. It was the last one we bought with like 21,000 hours on it, and it's kind of a pig, but it's here and we have to deal with it. It's got one engine rebuild on it, and it's currently being sent off for a rebuild in the transmission. I don't know who had this tractor before us or what they did to it, but they did not do it any favors, and it is rough, but it's still a Magnum, so it's still a pretty good tractor.